While browsing Stack Overflow today, I noticed this question that had to do with the Xamarin Community Toolkit and input validation, which I just made a video about. But this was kind of a more specific case, a more real-world case, so I decided to turn that big answer that I wrote there also into a video for your reference, and that you also can benefit of how this will use. So in this video, we will see how to trigger that validation through a button, work with it through MVVM and data binding. Basically, you will see a whole bunch of things, and after that, you can all review it by playing this video again or just reading that answer. So let's just go. First, let's check out the question that it's all about. This is Stack Overflow for the ones who don't know it. Who am I kidding? Everyone knows this because this is how I retain my job. This is, where I copy and paste my stuff. And so Xamarin Community Toolkit, input validation, connect with button. I started looking over this. I have a simple form where user adds email, so entry with a behavior, multi-validation, email validation. So if this is one validation, I'm not sure why it's multi, but you can do that. Maybe this person wants to add more, and we have a button with a command. So it's not really clear if they want to check it actually at the command. That is something that you can do with the code that we're about to implement, definitely. But I've shown a couple of ways how to go about this from either your code behind or with data binding. So let's go check that out and make this a more real world sample of what you can do with these input validation behaviors. So little spoiler alert, I'm going to scroll over the answer right here that I've created. I will link that in the video description so you can read it right after this video. And I've done basically three ways. So through the multi-validation behavior, because if you have multiples, then you want to check the valid state of all of them. Through the email validation, so just from this one validation behavior, maybe you don't want this multi-validation thing and you just want the email one, you can do that too. Or through data binding, because I noticed that they already had data binding going on here and for the command here. So maybe, you want to do it MVVM style and through the data binding. If you want to know more about data binding, please check out the other one. The video that's popping up on your screen. Actually, it's a playlist where I have a couple of things on data binding. And if something's not clear to you, please let me know in the comments and I'll make a video to explain that to you. That's how I work. And through data binding, so we're going to see how to do that little validation thing as well too. So you can read this afterwards, but I'm going to walk you through it. So the first thing I did is copy this entry and take that to our little IDE that's called Visual Studio for Mac 2019. You can see it running our file new Xamarin.Forms application on the left. Also works on Windows. You can see it running in the iOS simulator. Also works on Android. We love it all, so you can just do that. Let's update our title first and make it input validation sample again. Because the first one was that too. Hot reload takes care of the rest and will show me the output immediately. And I remove all of this. Whoops, there we go. And format this a little bit nicely, by the way. You can do that by pressing Ctrl-I in Visual Studio for Mac. So there's that. You can see it doesn't know these behaviors yet. So let's first add that namespace. So we're going to go to the top here, say XML/NS, XCT is toolkit. Oh, I didn't install the NuGet package yet. Okay, so let's just do that. Go to our solution, manage NuGet packages, search for Xamarin Community Toolkit. Here we go. At the time of recording, 102, latest stable version, add package. I'm going to add it to all of my projects right here. Technically, if you're just using the behaviors, that is not entirely necessary. You can just do it on your shared project, but you're probably going to use more of that sweet little toolkit. So why not install it on all of your projects while you're at it? This is going to add the packages. It's going to take a little bit. Maybe it's done it already for this one. Toolkit, there we go. Boom, save that, and we've got the toolkit. And we already see the entry right here. So why is this still not happy? Probably because I'm installing things while running. That is a pretty good reason. So it didn't update this thing yet. All right, so let's see, flags. We have the flags, validate on unfocusing, that's good. I explained that in my other video about the input validation. You can have a couple of flags that you can use to influence whenever the validation is happening, so you can really customize that. So binding email, I'm going to skip this right now. Placeholder email, that's good. I'm going to give this a little margin of 20 so that it looks a little bit nicer. So here we go. All right. So the first thing I wanted to do is show it with the multi-validation behavior. So what you want to do then is do the X name and let's say my multi-validation. Here we go. Save that. And now we have a variable name that we can reference it by. So let's add that button that was talked about, button, and to make that text, validate multi-validation behavior. There we go. So we know which one we're going to do. Our clicked handler, of course. So there's our button. And let's copy and paste that one. And let's say our email validation so that we're prepared for the next one. Create a new clicked handler. There we go. So we have two buttons that we can trigger now. And you know, in that light, let's also give this one a name already, my email validation, something like that. So there we have it. We can do all of those things. Now, actually, let's just stop this because I'm going crazy over all these squigglies. Let's add a few breaks here so it's a little bit more clear. Because of the big fonts, it's a little bit of a mess. So we have the multi-validation, and if you've watched the previous video, you know that we can, you know, aggregate the errors of all the behaviors that's in here. In this case, it's just going to be one, but you know, you can have multiple. So the isValid property of the multi-validation is going to go through all the validations, and whenever they're all true, whenever they're all valid, then isValid on the multi-validation will be true too. If one of those behaviors is false with the isValid, then isValid on the multi-validation behavior is going to be false as well. That sounds logical, right? So what you want to do then, we also have an errors property here that you can inspect for all the errors inside of this multi-validation. And to make use of that, you want to go to your email validation in this case, and we can say xet multi-validation behavior dot error. Here we go. We already have it, and we can say email is not valid. There we go. Save that. And now whenever this one is not valid, it will propagate this multi-validation error into this multi-validation behavior, and it will add it to this errors property because that is a collection of objects. To be honest, I don't know why it's objects. I should definitely look into that. I would expect it to be just strings because it can only be strings, I think. But you have a collection of all the things, and you can show that to your user like, hey, these are the errors that you need to fix for this to become valid. So that is pretty cool. Now, if we go to that button clicked, so let's go to the code behind, and let's say this is our multi-validation. There we go. Multi-validation, and this is our email validation. And we can say here on our button click, so this is the multi-validation one, and we can say if not my multi-valid, and I'm not sure, probably need to save this and just copy this name here. If my multi-validation is valid, for some reason the IntelliSense doesn't pick it up. And else we're just going to say, we probably want to make this async so we can use await display alert. Hooray! All valid. Okay. So this is our happy path, right? So whenever this is valid, we're just going to say, hey, all valid, all good. Whenever this happens, so let's maybe build this a little bit. Maybe it picks it up then. Whenever this is not valid, now it still shows us errors, but it seems to be doing things. I've noticed this is kind of a previewed version of Visual Studio for Mac, so I'm going to trust that this just all works. And we can say whenever this is not valid, I'm going to get a error builder. which is a new string builder. So whenever you're doing string manipulations, you probably want to use the string builder. Why that is, you have to go look that up because working with strings can be pretty inefficient. So go check out the string builder. And then we're going to say for each, because it's an object in errors, like I mentioned in my multivalidation.errors, we can have a look here. So it's a list of objects. Again, I need to check why that is. And I'm going to see if that is an error. So if well, let's make it error. That's a little bit better. Make it error. If error is string, which it should always be, in my opinion, then we can say error builder dot append line, and here we go. We're just going to say error dot to string. There we go. So this should add our strings, and we have a a big string builder of the multiple errors. If there are multiples, in this case it's just going to be one, but you know, this will show you the real world example as I promised. And what we're then going to do is await display alert error, and we can say the error builder dot to string, which will compile all the strings in here, and we can say again okay, and we can do that. So this is our multi-validation scenario. I'm just going to leave that here. I'm going to show you in a little bit, so just remember this one. I'm going to implement the email validation as well, just so that we don't have to stop and start our application each time. So let's go over to the email validation here as well, and I'm going to again use that alert. So let's do this, but here I can basically copy this one. There we go. Do it like that, but we're not going to do for each. Here I can just say my email validation is not valid. So here I can just say, okay, error, email not valid, right? Because I know this is in the email field because I'm checking the email directly. So this is how to do that, right? So whenever I run this now, let's see if we can do that. Then we should see, you know, whenever it's valid, we should get the hooray, and whenever it's invalid, we should see either, you know, our error coming in from that errors object, or we should just get this one. So let's check the multi-validation one first. I'm going to type in blah, blah, blah. It's going to autocorrect it to something weird. And I'm going to say validate, and it's going to say error not valid. So we can see, sorry, email not valid. There we go. But whenever I do, you know, have a valid email address, then you can see it actually says hooray, all valid. So you see, this is the right thing. So the same for the normal email validation one. If I do this, then it says email not valid. And whenever I say again, a valid email address, and it says hooray, all valid. See, so both of these now work. We can say, you know, it's not valid, it's valid, with different things, right? So if you would add multiple validations in here, that top one will still work, and you would get different error messages depending on what you input there. So that is really cool. So then there's one scenario left with the data binding. So for that, add a little bit of more stuff. So I'm basically just going to copy this entry and put that down here at the bottom. And, oh, that's too much at the bottom. I should put it inside of the stack layout. Here we go. And what I'm going to say is not use these names because we don't need that for the binding. Here we go, not this one. And actually, let's just remove this multi one as well. Again, you can do this like on the multi thing as well, the exact same thing that I'm going to show you right here, and you can bind to that error collection as well. So you can do all those things, but I'm going to show you this email validation one. Then we don't need this error too, but what we do need is say is valid, and I'm going to bind that to the email valid property. So let's do that. And we have this one. So now I have this, and what you can do is create a label and give that a text where it says email not valid. There we go. And we can say is visible binding email valid. I named it. There we go. and do that. So, and what we do need, because whenever is valid, so is valid is going to be true whenever it's valid, but we want to show this whenever it's not valid. So we need to invert this little thing right here. So what we want to add here is a converter, and we want to use a static resource, which is going to be invert bool. There we go, converter there. Let's name it like that. And we need to add that to our content page. So I also have a video on the resources. I have a video on these converters, I think. So go check them out. I will pop up one on your screen, put it down in the video description. So check it out if that's what you still need to learn. And resource dictionary, here we go. And make that xct dot inverted bool converter. There we go. X key is, what did I name it? Copy, paste. There we go. So what's this going to do is whenever the value of this email valid changes, it's first going to go through this converter, which simply inverts the bool. So whenever it's valid, then it's going to be the is valid is going to be true, and then it's going to convert to false because we want to show this label the exact opposite of the is valid thing, right? Let's make this text color red so it's extra, clear that it's an error. Then what we need to do in our code behind, we need to add a public string, well, not a string, a boolean, email valid, get set. There we go. Actually, we need to convert this. I'm going to right click, quick actions refactoring, convert this to a full property because I need to manually trigger the is changed, property is changed, notify property changed. That's the name that I was looking for. So let's do this. Again, this is a little bit of the data binding stuff that you need to know. So if it's not entirely clear what I'm doing here, then let me know in the comments and I'll do that video on property changed on what exactly am I doing here. But this basically lets the UI know that the value of email valid has changed, and then it knows that it needs to update the UI and flip those bits around. So let's do that. And of course, to make this all work, I need to set the binding context to this, to make sure that it knows that this is the object where we need to actually bind to that email valid thing. So, okay, do I need anything else? I don't think so. I think I've got it all. So let's see if we can run this again. And while this is running, I picked up a little trick. I didn't look into it yet, where they mentioned that I do not need to specify this converter in my resources because, we've implemented a certain way in the toolkit. So the toolkit was even better than I actually know myself. And you don't need to add it here to these resources. I'm not sure how to do that, but I will find out. And whenever I do, I will make another video of that. Or teach me something and tell me in the comments how to do it. And I'll still make a video on it. All right, so here we have that email. And as you can see, the label is not showing up right now because, this empty state is apparently something valid. But whenever I enter here something now, it comes up and it says email not valid because this is not a valid email. But whenever I do this and say blah.com, then it disappears again because it's valid and it goes through that converter, inverts it, and that's how to do this with data binding. Of course, you could still add that button with that command and check the email valid, so I don't have to bind this to the is visible. I can also check now the email valid whenever I trigger a command and read the value of that is valid, see if it's false, and then set maybe some other boolean or still show that dialog if that's what you want. But that's how to work with it with data binding and MVVM. Hopefully this will give you a little bit of a deeper knowledge on how to work with those input validations, how to work with that multi-validation behavior, how to work with that email validation behavior. Of course, it's not just the email validation behavior. You can use any validation behavior that I've done here. It works with the same principles, that error thing, the is valid boolean. You can do all the things. So now it's up to you to, make it look pretty. That's something that I typically cannot do, and implement it into your own application. Let me know what that looks like, because I'm very curious to always see the apps and the beautiful things that you're creating. Other than that, please like this video if you've liked it, subscribe to my channel. I'm sure you already did, but just double check, maybe click that subscribe button, click that little bell so you'll be notified of new content immediately. And maybe if you're already subscribed, you can consider becoming a member of this channel and supporting me a little bit with all the things I do. I would very much appreciate it. And with that, the only thing I can still say is I'll see you for the next one, and keep coding.